live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com. Your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the program, on the telephone line, we have with us American musician, songwriter, producer, who's performed with rock bands such as Mink De Ville, has played with Ritchie Blackmore's Night, Rainbow, and many others. We welcome in Bob Curiano, a.k.a. Bob Nouveau. Bob, Brian C., honor to have you.
Brian C., Brian Cataquet. Are you kidding me? Quet, isn't it French, Cataquet?
Yeah, it is. How about Bob Nouveau?
Well, you know, I decided to get in your camp, but who says it right? Who says Curiano right? Or who says Cataquet right? You know, I know you're French.
Well, listen, it's an honor to have you, and I want to begin in your music career today. Bob spans professionally 52 years, and it all began on a pro level, 1970s, performing and touring with the Manhattan-based group Mink De Ville, right?
Correct. Yes, I was introduced to them as you know that was happening in the Village in the mid-'70s, but parallel to that, it was the height of disco. Don't forget.
Yes. But how were you ushered into the group? How were you ushered into the band?
Okay, I had an original band that a friend of mine was managing, but he was also road managing bands like Mink De Ville and The Clash, and he got the inside. They were looking for a guitar player. And I couldn't go out on the road at that time. I was married, and she didn't like, I shouldn't say, you know what you do for a woman. Okay, honey, I won't go on that bus. So I recommended my buddy Rick Borgia, who was playing with me in my band. And so he got in the original rotation for Seabees, and I did not, although I was aware of what was going on down there. I was not in until the early 80s with Mink De Ville when he returned the favor as they were changing the lineup again. I went in as a bass player at that point.
Right, and when you look back at Mink De Ville's history, you really joined, you know, an iconic group, which is part of the punk rock revolution, right? Because they were the house band for Seabees, right?
Well, that's correct, but when you think about it, and I know Willie DeVille was the singer, you know, he was inspired by Benny King and the Temptations, James Brown. He really was not, he was singing about love and emotion, not about, you know, I want to sniff glue.
Right.
Like the Ramones. He wasn't, you know, putting giant safety pins through his nipples. I mean, and I looked at that, and I was kind of horrified at that look myself. Let's go out for some piercings, and let's get that giant safety pin in there through the nipple. Don't get that caught on anything, please.
So for the West Coast audience listening, Bob, we got to remind the audience, Seabees was really an institution for that early movement. That's where the Ramones came out of, Blondie, and so many others.
Correct.
All right, so these were the late 70s. You were playing for the group. You were touring. You were with the group for a decade, and then what happened? What, you had other aspirations?
I was in and out of there. You do get other aspirations. You get offers. You want to do your own thing, etc. Yeah. Along the way, you know, the Perlman story. I had known him since 1973. If that's where we're going with this, but he tried to do something with me. He was just a little kid from Queens at the time, but his cousin was Art Garfunkel, and he came up to me at one of my gigs and says, "Hey, do you want to be a duo with me? My cousin is Art Garfunkel. We could be the next one." And I kind of looked at it with raised eyebrow because, I mean, here's this guy, you know. Pudgy little guy, an accounting major from Queens College. And it just didn't, nice guy, but it didn't quite work out. And it led to other things, though, 10 years later, when he called me and said, "Hey, found these kids. Can you come down to Orlando?" And it was the Backstreet Boys, you know, not having yet formed. Until I came in and, you know, sort of had them sing harmonies, and they couldn't even dance or sing together at that time. But yeah, I mean, things go, distract you along the way. I was a journeyman musician who freelanced, so I was all over the place. In 1977, I was more into Steely Dan and Sting or the Police than I was into punk music.
Yeah, so I mean, it's amazing. So we can say that you were the inaugural producer for Backstreet Boys, right?
I think I can't say for certain because maybe they had tried recording some things before, but yeah, and in fact, it was used on a handshake to help them lip sync with and go out and perform and shop around and get signed to a label. I did it in good faith, being trusting my good friend, and you should have a contract, Bob. But I just I went with how I grew up in a neighborhood where we didn't lock our doors and trusted people, and learned later on that you can trust them. On one hand, you can count them. That expression. Perlman was kind of opportunistic, and when he got the offer, and Jive said, well, we're bringing in our own people, and I had no contract, then I was out.
So when Jive came in, I guess it became very corporate, huh?
Well, they had a whole lineup of a production team, writers, and the boys, quite frankly, were like cut out of a mold, like the Motown bands were performers, and then they had a team of writers and everybody else who were their support, and they were just the performers. The content was created by other people.
So Bob, like mid-1990s, the very early years of the Backstreet Boys, is it a fact they were performing your material very early, 96, 97?
It was 1993, and
okay.
There were a couple of songs I did. One of them was mine, and another one was a cover song, Get Ready, by The Temptations. And they used those tracks, and they did get signed. I'm glad I could be a part in helping what I didn't know would be the biggest boy band of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you were really responsible for directing the performances of BSB. There's no question about it.
Well, Perlman, he was the manager. I went down there as a hired gun to do my thing, my little skill set and specialty. I played several instruments, and this is what I was able to do, that the one-man show. And so I was brought in to do that, went back home, not thinking that any, in this business, yeah, good luck with that, and then it's out of your mind. And then I saw them on the Thanksgiving Day float on Fifth Avenue, and I got a little grumpy, like, hey, I have no contract. And there they go with, 20 million records.
Yes, fascinating. So your first reaction when you first heard the Backstreet Boys, what was your first reaction?
Look, it was a formula, and Perlman was aware of the formula, he knew there was a big hole in the market for this kind of act. It had disappeared. The New Kids on the Block were the previous one, but there was nothing in there of a teeny bop kind of bubblegum singing a boy band. He brought it back, smart that way, and later on, not so smart in other ways.
We're talking with Bob Curiano, a.k.a. The legendary guitarist, a.k.a. Bob Nouveau. Now, fascinating story meeting Ritchie Blackmore. Talk about the history you have with Ritchie. It's fascinating story.
Well, I quit the road in 91. I had my first child. I stayed home. Around 1999, I was playing somewhere, and Ritchie's manager saw me and came up and said, would you be interested in playing with Ritchie Blackmore? I said, you mean that Ritchie Blackmore from Deep Purple? And I said, well, okay. I went to meet him in some pub, and we sat there for hours just drinking beers. And actually, I was going in as a bass player, but we sat there all night playing guitars together. And the pub was called the Normandy Inn. And after that night, okay, we think you're in, and what's your name? I said, well, I guess I'm Sir Robert of Normandy, being in the spirit of this medieval music that Ritchie was now doing. Of course, I knew him back when he was, raising hell as a hard rock guitar player with Smoke on the Water and all that. Interesting, though, because it demanded another skill set of playing acoustically and then switching to electric. And he was a very exacting kind of player, which was good. He was disciplined, which rather than some other situations where it's very loose and you don't know where guys are and blah, blah, blah. Ritchie was very good at leading the band in that way.
Now, everyone knows in the business, he's not the easiest person to get along with, right? He's very moody, and he's been very public about that.
Yeah, well, you have to understand the English sense of humor, which I do. It's kind of cutting, and you have to be made of metal, but it cuts right to the core, and it's funny. And we've had our jokes, and I get it. It's very dry, and for instance, when it was time for me to do a bass solo, he said, now go out there and go make a fool of yourself. Ritchie was, I'd laugh, and we'd laugh. Some people didn't get it. They were petrified of him, but, it was really a sense of humor, and he's really kind of a genuine guy, an English guy who likes to drink beer and play soccer and guitar in the meantime.
And Bob, you told me a fascinating story via email in which he handed you his guitar. Talk about that. He was like a great prankster, right?
Exactly, as they all were. These English guys, were famous for the Spinal Tap carry-on. There were times when Ritchie would, if he had a little riff going with someone in the band, he would send the roadies ahead before we got there, to empty this guy's room of furniture and spray garlic all over the doorknobs. And you had to be aware of where the next prank was coming, and you didn't want to be on the wrong side of it. They would do things to outdo each other, those English bands in those days. The Who and all those stories, that's really what went on. It was kind of a crazy time. In fact, I may thank God that I wasn't back in those days. In the heyday of that, it would have been excessive, I think, to hold up under that when you're throwing TV sets out a window or wrapping your tour manager up in duct tape and hanging him out the back of a car or something. That was probably the peak of all that stuff. Ritchie had calmed down a little by the time I got to him. Thank you.
Man, so Bob, you must have been in awe being on stage with a guy like Ritchie Blackmore, so much history. How was his work ethic? Did he expect a lot from you and the band?
Yeah, it was a great work ethic, but like some others in the band might have idolized him and been in awe, I wasn't used to that kind of. I'm a little older now, so I took to him more as a bandmate, even though he was an iconic figure. I can't be in a band where I'm walking on eggshells and be afraid of what to say and even be trying to ask for your autograph. I wasn't, that's not how I was a member in a band. You were bandmates, you hung out, you drank beer together, and it wasn't where you're very afraid to even, voice something in front of a guitar god that you might be, on the end of his wrath if you said the wrong thing. So, I remember being in a room once where everybody's playing very tentatively and afraid of making a mistake. So I make a mistake. Well, the room goes quiet. I said, yeah, I made a mistake. I said, that's what I'm here to rehearse. You make mistakes at rehearsal. And Ritchie kind of smiled and said, right, carry on. And it kind of cooled things off. It took the edge off people's nervousness being around somebody of that stature. But I'll tell you, it's nice to look over when you're on stage and playing Smoke on the Water and realize, hey, I'm playing it with the guy. It's like, my only second wish was to have been be playing with McCartney and singing John Lennon's part. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, like you said, he is a guitar god, no doubt about it. So, so you joined the band Blackmore's Night in 2000, and then your departure was 2006, right at the end of the second European tour?
Yep.
And why did you depart the band then? You
Again,
had different
I
things
had to
going
take
on?
care. I had a business going at home with freelancing, and I finally had to button up some things and stay home. A year later, who calls me? Mink De Ville. Willie calls me for another round with him. And this time it was different. He wasn't well. I had a feeling this was maybe his last time going around, and it was. So I played with him until he died. I went out, as a friend and to help him. He was not the same man that I left in 1990. He had really, whatever abuses of substance and anything else, his lifestyle really took a toll on him. And he was limping. He had to sit down. He couldn't see well. He couldn't remember lyrics. And so I went up out of goodwill and supported him as best I could.
Man, and then the story goes, in 2015, Blackmore decided to recommence Rainbow, and he invited you back as the bass player. So he really drew a liking to you.
Well, I mean, people in the rock world were waiting 30 years for Ritchie to pick up the Stratocaster again. And I think he did it for different reasons, not to be king of the hill anymore, but just to give the fans some nostalgia, have him do it. Didn't do much work, didn't do a lot of shows, didn't do much rehearsing. It wasn't really something that was, hammered into us as having to be, full tilt touring a year again. No. He had kids now. I think it was great for the kids to see who Daddy was in his legacy as a guitar player and as someone who was that famous, who could fill a 25,000-seat auditorium just because of his name. And it was a thrill for the kids. And for me, I wish he could have been a little bit more well-rehearsed and brought up to speed like piss and vinegar that it was back then. But hey, we all had a good time, and Ritchie wasn't worried about it, so why should I, But it was great being part of that. And we did Deep Purple songs also. So the show was more of a story of Ritchie's career than it was, the reincarnation of Rainbow, which has now different members than the other Rainbow lineups, and there were many different lineups.
Now, that second round with Blackmore, that's when you acquired the name Nouveau?
Yeah, well, here we go with the pranks again. Oh, you need a name, another stage name, because we had played around with Sir Robert of Normandy. So I went with it. I said, I need to be a new Bob. So I just, new, Nouveau in French. I'll do that. Okay, good. And the reaction was, who the hell is Bob Nouveau? So that's when I started the Facebook page to sort of clear up the confusion. And here we are, and I'm digging through I get some fan mail, who the heck am I, right? I'm not the star. But even in Mink De Ville, through COVID, I'm looking through boxes, and I find this piece of fan mail from somebody from the Mink De Ville days, from a fan who liked me, and wrote in the fan mail, Bob, you're my favorite nobody. And I thought that was kind of endearing, Okay, I'm not the star, but I'm his favorite nobody. And Brian, somewhere today, you're someone, loved one's favorite nobody. But maybe you're more famous than that. I don't know, Brian. I'll take you out for a drink and we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think I have a little cut. Sean, do we have that clip? Okay, I have a little cut of you performing that I want to play, and then we could talk about, okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
Surprise, Bob. Surprise.
Let's hear it.
I don't want to see the end of that rainbow. I ain't looking for no pot of gold. I don't want to reach the end of years. I know you lost all hope. That rainbow was here. Now it shines. Oh, how does it shine? It shines on me. Now my blues are gone. 'Cause this rainbow, it shines on. It shines on. Now sing it. Let the rainbow shine.
And there you have it. Let the Rainbow Shine by Bob Curiano. Good stuff, Bob. Very soulful.
Somehow I
Soulful
knew you'd
tune.
play that one. That was my little ditty blues song that I whipped up as a tribute, really, to the reformation of Rainbow. Not wanting to be anything, novel or about it, but it was just a blues song. I did it all, played all those instruments in my little antiquated studio here in Connecticut, Brian.
Yes, you're my
and
neighbor.
there you go. But, there's also a song I just put on Spotify. I'm starting to do this now. I have 1 million songs called Your Favorite Nobody, which is tribute to that fan mail I got, Your Favorite Nobody. But
Well, for
thank
the
you for
listening
playing
audience,
it.
Bob, give us your website where they can purchase your material. Go right ahead. The stage is yours.
I don't have that together yet. You can go on Spotify and ask to play Bob Nouveau or Bob Curiano. It kind of knows I'm two guys, one guy with two names, like you, Brian. Confusing, but it works. And I'm just starting to. I must have 200 songs, and I'm digging them all, trying to digitize them, get them off magnetic tape. They're falling apart, and it covers 50 years of music, and I'm finally going to put it out there for, 0.001 per penny or whatever they pay. I don't care. I love music, and the music business I grew up with, as I knew it, is over, really. I don't know what you think.
No, I think so. And I wanted to ask you, you must have seen so much of a change. You've been in this, 5 decades. You must have seen so much change. What's the biggest change? Is it the social media aspect of the music business?
Well, the publishing is gone. There were times when you sold an album, you sold a single, there was cover art, you sold sheet music. The business side of it, that side of it is gone. Also, I don't really know what the top 10 is. Remember those days? You knew what was happening. Now there's the top 1,000 in all different genres, and I have no idea what this generation's sound, voice, or what they're saying is. You kind of knew in the punk rock days that they were singing about alienation and self-destruction. And in the 60s, they were singing about revolution and give peace. And they were dancing and partying in the 70s. There was an identifying quality to a youth culture. Now, I don't know. It's just files of music, subgenres, and music for this or that. And I don't know what's happening. You tell me.
So I have about a minute left. So what are you doing? Are you touring? Are you planning to tour in 2022, Bob?
I haven't heard from Ritchie, but the longer this COVID thing goes on, I'm losing my confidence. As we're all getting older, and when that's going to happen again. But in the meantime, Brian, you can come see me. I'll let you know where, at some little watering hole here in Connecticut, but I expect you to be wearing, your Ralph Lauren monogram pants when you come see me.
I will. And listen, I really appreciate your time. I consider you one of the pioneers of the early punk rock movement, Bob. I mean, you were right there in the heart of it, performing with Mink De Ville, so I appreciate it.
I don't have pierced nipples.
I'll
Okay?
remember that when I see you.
Just for the record.
I really appreciate it. In closing, any final words?
No, let's Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, whatever you're doing, and oh my, Kron, when is that going to go? It sounds like a new metal act, doesn't it? Oh, Omicron.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Maybe a sci-fi movie.
It's really depressing. But we try to keep it positive in this show. You know, having you here, it's very positive.
All right, the double C's, Brian C. and Bob C. I guess I'm signing off.
Yes, sir. We'll speak soon. I appreciate it.
All right, don't forget, we'll get in touch and I'll meet you somewhere.
Yes, sir. This the legendary Bob Curiano, a.k.a. Bob Nouveau, is just with us. And check out his Facebook page, Bob Curiano, a.k.a. Bob Nouveau. Until next week, happy collecting to all.